It was a quiet town, tucked away in the foothills, with streets that twisted like forgotten memories. Every town has its stories, and ours was no different. But there was one tale no one would speak of after dark: the Shadow of Crossroads Hill. The hill stood on the outskirts, where the last street lamp flickered and the woods began. At the top, there was an old, crumbling house, its windows dark, its door forever locked. No one remembered who built it, and no one dared to get close. The town believed it was cursed, but like all curses, it had a beginning. The story goes back to the 1930s. A man named Thomas Grimm had lived in that house, a recluse, hidden from the world. People said he dabbled in strange things, rituals and spells. The children whispered that on certain nights, when the moon hung low, they saw figures dancing in the woods around his house. But the adults brushed it off until one summer evening, a boy went missing. His name was Michael, just 10 years old. He'd been playing with friends near the crossroads when he vanished, leaving nothing but a lone shoe behind. The town searched for days, but the deeper into the woods they went, the more twisted the trees became, like they were trying to trap anyone who ventured too far. Eventually, they stopped looking. That night, the first person saw the shadow. A woman named Eliza, a widow who lived at the base of the hill, claimed she saw a figure standing by the crossroads at midnight. Not a person, but something darker, its shape flickering like smoke against the backdrop of the old house. She called it a shadow, but it wasn't cast by anything. It moved on its own, creeping closer to her house, disappearing just before dawn. Eliza was never the same after that night. She stopped going into town, and weeks later, she disappeared, vanished without a trace. The only thing left was her front door swinging open in the wind. More people began to see it after that. Always at the crossroads, always at midnight. It didn't matter where you were in town. If you looked up the hill at just the right moment, you could spot the shadow standing perfectly still, watching, waiting. The ones who stared too long, well, they didn't stay around for much longer either. Some left town, never to return. Others simply vanished, like Michael and Eliza. One man, old Mr. Harper, swore he knew the truth. He'd lived in town long enough to remember Thomas Grimm, and the night the curse began. He said Grimm had made a pact with something from the woods, something ancient and hungry. It demanded a price, and when Grimm refused to pay, it took him and every soul it could get its hands on. Harper said the shadow was what remained of Grimm, wandering the crossroads, bound to the hill for all eternity, waiting to claim anyone who dared look its way. No one believed Harper at first. He was just an old man with too many stories. But one night, he took a lantern and climbed the hill, determined to put an end to the curse. Townspeople watched from their windows as the light from his lantern flickered and vanished at the crossroads. Harper was never seen again. The town learned to live with the shadow after that. It became part of the landscape, a thing to be ignored, avoided at all costs. People knew better than to look up the hill after dark. But every once in a while, a curious traveler or an unsuspecting newcomer would linger too long near the crossroads, drawn to the old house. And the next morning, they'd be gone, leaving behind nothing but an eerie silence. So, if you ever find yourself in a small town where the streets twist and turn and the woods creep too close, remember, don't look at the hill after midnight. The shadow might be watching, waiting, ready to claim another soul. And once it has you, there's no coming back.